Australia's aviation industry is one of the most fascinating and fiercely competitive markets in the world. From the long-standing duopoly between Qantas and Virgin Australia to the rise and fall of iconic airlines like Ansett Australia, Qantas Airlines, and more, the skies down under have seen their fair share of turbulence. We're diving into the world of Australian aviation, exploring the industry's key players, the challenges of breaking into the market, and why so many airlines have failed to take off. At the heart of Australia's aviation landscape is a fierce rivalry, the Qantas Group versus Virgin Australia. Together, these two dominate the market, controlling around 95% of the domestic airline industry, with Qantas and Virgin Australia each holding approximately 34% market share, and Jetstar, Qantas's low-cost subsidiary, holding around 27%. Qantas, Australia's national carrier, has been in the skies since 1920. Known for its reliability, premium service, and iconic kangaroo logo, it operates both domestic and international routes. Although it can suffer from negative press due to its high dominance, it remains profitable to diverse revenue streams such as its frequent flyer program, freight operation, customer loyalty, and limited competition, thus attracting strong yields with its ticket pricing compared to others. Virgin Australia, Qantas's biggest competitor, entered the market in 2000 as Virgin Blue. Initially a low-cost carrier, it evolved into a full-service airline, offering an alternative for both leisure and business travelers. But Virgin Australia hasn't had it easy, facing financial difficulties, changes in ownership, and even entering administration during the COVID-19 pandemic, successfully exiting administration under new ownership as a profitable, mid-market, value-based carrier. This duopoly shapes ticket prices, route availability, and even the in-flight experience for millions of travelers. But why has it been so hard for other airlines to compete? Breaking into Australia's aviation industry has proven to be a monumental challenge. Many airlines have tried and failed. Let's start with the biggest name in Australian aviation history. Founded in 1936 by Reginald Ansett, Ansett Australia began as a regional airline flying a single Fokker universal aircraft. Over the decades, it grew into one of Australia's most recognized and trusted carriers, serving both domestic and international routes. At its peak, Ansett was known for its exceptional service, innovative approach, and extensive fleet, including iconic aircraft like the Boeing 767 and Airbus A320. Despite its successes, Ansett faced mounting challenges by the 1990s. These included a series of poor management and financial decisions, such as maintaining multiple aircraft types within its fleet, aggressive expansion, a top-heavy management structure, and above-market remuneration for staff. The introduction of a deregulated market in the early 1990s added further pressure, as new competitors like Qantas Airlines, Impulse Airlines, and Virgin Blue entered the industry. In 2000, Air New Zealand acquired a controversial controlling stake in Ansett. However, this move proved disastrous. Air New Zealand was already struggling financially and was unable to provide the necessary support to help Ansett remain viable. Reports also surfaced that Air New Zealand had diverted Ansett's finances to support its own airline, further weakening Ansett's ability to address its mounting operational and financial issues. By September 2001, Ansett entered administration, just days after the September 11 attacks, which caused a dramatic decline in global travel demand. Efforts were made to save the airline, including a potential buyout by Tesna Consortium, a group led by Melbourne businessmen Lindsay Fox and Solomon Lew. However, after months of negotiations, the deal fell through due to concerns about Ansett's mounting debt and operational challenges. Without a viable buyer, Ansett ceased operations entirely in March 2002, marking the end of an iconic era in Australian aviation. Ansett's downfall had a ripple effect across the Australian aviation industry, clearing the way for Qantas to dominate the market while opening the door for Virgin Blue, later Virgin Australia, to rise as a major competitor. There have been attempts to enter the Australian aviation market. Qantas Airlines, which had two attempts, Qantas Mark I in 1990 and Qantas Mark II in 1992. Both tried to disrupt the market with low-cost services but were quickly grounded due to financial instability and intense competition from Qantas and Ansett. Jump forward to the 2000s, and we saw the rise of Tiger Air, an ultra-low-cost carrier owned initially by Singapore Airlines. Tiger Air aimed to shake up the market with aggressively low fares, but it struggled with poor customer service, operational challenges, and safety concerns. In 2011, the airline's entire fleet was grounded by the Civil Aviation Safety Authority over serious safety violations. Although Tiger Air resumed operations after addressing these issues, the incident severely damaged its reputation. Ultimately, the airline couldn't sustain profitability in Australia's competitive market and ceased operations in 2020 during the pandemic. Other notable players include Impulse Airlines, which merged into Qantas in 2001 to later become Jetstar. Ozjet, launched in 2005, offered an all-business class service on domestic routes aimed at business travelers, although it struggled to compete with Qantas and Virgin Blue, facing limited demand and financial difficulties. After shifting to charter services, Ozjet ceased operations in 2009. Strategic Airlines, born in 1991, was a charter airline and grew into the renamed Air Australia in 2011, competing in both the domestic and international markets. It suspended operations in February 2012 due to the competitive market, reliance on price-sensitive leisure routes, and operating with an unsustainable business model that focused on international routes without a strong domestic presence. Bonza, a regional budget carrier launched in 2022 with hopes of capturing underserved low-frequency routes, faced challenges with a limited fleet size, low passenger demand, and underinvestment, collapsing in July 2024. Even Regional Express Airlines, commonly known as REX, faced turbulence after transitioning from a regional player to competing with jet services on major routes like Sydney to Melbourne. Struggling to gain significant market share after its jet expansion, REX entered voluntary administration in July 2024, suspending its jet services indefinitely. Why do so many airlines fail in Australia? There are several reasons which make Australia a difficult market for new airlines to enter. First, let's talk about costs, because operating an airline in Australia is ridiculously expensive. One of the biggest reasons: fuel costs. Jet fuel prices are high globally, but Australia's isolation makes it worse. Having limited refining capacity means a lot of fuel is imported. Then there are labor costs. Australia's workforce is well compensated, good for employees, but bad for airline budgets. With Australia's robust labor protections, the cost of employment and strikes or disputes with unions, such as the notoriously active Transport Workers Union, can disrupt operations significantly. Add to that the airport fees. Australian airports charge some of the highest fees worldwide, holding 4 of the 5 most profitable airports globally. From landing to parking, airlines pay a premium to use facilities in cities like Sydney and Melbourne. Next, let's talk about competition. Australia's aviation market might look busy, but it's not as big as you think. With a population of around just 27 million people, there's only so much demand. And yet, we have major players like Qantas, Virgin Australia, and Jetstar constantly fighting for market share. This leads to fare wars, which are great for passengers but terrible for airlines trying to turn a profit. But here's where it gets interesting. The Melbourne-Sydney route is actually the most profitable air route in the world. This is because there's no viable alternative. Australia doesn't have a high-speed rail system linking its biggest cities, so air travel is the only practical option. Virgin Australia and Qantas, with its low-cost subsidiary Jetstar, dominate this route, and it's a gold mine. In fact, Qantas reportedly makes over $1 billion annually from this single route. But even with this cash cow, the competition and high costs eat away at the margins for other airlines that try to break into this market. Australia's geography is a blessing and a curse for airlines. It's a massive country, and air travel is often the only way to get between cities. Such long distances not only mean longer flight times, but they also mean higher fuel consumption, which constitutes one of the largest expenses for airlines. Other expenses, such as crew wages and catering, can also be increased, creating unique challenges or may help dictate what market segment the airline will cater for. Qantas is the only main airline provider in Australia to offer a full-service product. With Australia's major cities clustered on the east coast, airlines rely heavily on a handful of routes. This creates congestion at major hubs like Sydney and Melbourne, which drives up costs even more. Australia's economy is closely tied to industries like tourism, mining, and international education. When these sectors thrive, airlines benefit. But when they falter, like during the COVID-19 pandemic or global economic downturns, airlines feel the impact immediately. Unlike other businesses, airlines can't just pause operations and wait for better times. Airlines incur significant fixed costs, as aircraft still need maintenance, employees need to be paid, and other commitments such as loans need to be serviced. This leaves little room for financial missteps, particularly with new starters with limited capital investment or reserve. Australia's aviation industry is also heavily regulated. While necessary to ensure passenger safety, Australia's Civil Aviation Safety Authority enforces strict and complex safety standards. Compliance often requires significant investment in training, technology, and operational adjustments, which increase costs. Major airports in Australia, such as Sydney and Melbourne, operate as monopolies and impose some of the highest fees in the world for landing, parking, and terminal usage. Regulatory oversight of airport pricing has been criticized as inadequate. Landing and takeoff slots at busy airports like Sydney are tightly controlled. The lack of available slots restricts the ability of airlines to increase capacity on profitable routes or introduce new services. Established players like Qantas and Virgin Australia control prime takeoff and landing slots, leaving new entrants with less desirable times or secondary routes, which can limit their revenue potential. Reports suggest that Rex was allegedly denied prime slots in Sydney due to slot hoarding by Qantas and Virgin Australia, which may have contributed to their jet operation failure. Of course, poor strategic management has also played a major role in airline failures. Take Virgin Australia entering voluntary administration during the COVID pandemic, after a decade of poor management, attempting to take on established Qantas with a full-service offering, which led to years of fare wars, limiting Virgin Australia's ability to weather any downturn event. Even Rex's decision of choosing to adopt jet operations led to it entering administration too. Similarly to Bonza, it attempted to compete with the established Qantas and Virgin Australia with limited slot allocations, a small fleet, and limited cash reserves, which led to it collapsing quickly. External shocks often deliver the fatal blow. Airlines are incredibly vulnerable to global events like pandemics, economic crises, and even natural disasters. COVID-19, for example, grounded international travel for months. Virgin Australia, already burdened with significant debt, went into administration almost immediately due to the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, ultimately surviving thanks to a buyout by Bain Capital. Lastly, but just as importantly, the Qantas Group and Virgin Australia's dominance of the Australian airline market creates high barriers for new entrants, as smaller airlines struggle to compete on scale, pricing, customer loyalty, and route networks. Qantas and Virgin Australia have well-established loyalty programs, leveraging the highly successful Qantas Frequent Flyer and Velocity Frequent Flyer programs, and have extensive partnerships with international airlines. These programs lock in high-value customers, making it harder for newcomers to attract and retain passengers. While intense competition exists between Qantas and Virgin Australia, their control over the market allows them to set ticket prices at levels that protect their margins. When smaller competitors, such as Rex or Bonza, attempt to undercut fares, Qantas and Virgin Australia can respond with temporary price cuts to maintain market share, often driving rivals out. Qantas and Virgin Australia both operate large modern fleets, over 100 aircraft, which enables them to offer frequent services and cater to diverse customer segments, from budget-conscious travelers with Qantas's own subsidiary Jetstar, to mid-market travelers with Virgin Australia, to premium travelers with Qantas. Smaller competitors may match the product offering, but cannot match such established frequency or flexibility, making it hard to attract travelers who value convenience and reliability. Australia is one of the most challenging aviation markets to enter. While competition is necessary for innovation and lower fares, history shows that survival requires more than just a good business plan. It takes deep pockets, strategic vision, and a bit of luck. Despite these challenges, the future of Australian aviation is full of possibilities. Qantas and Virgin Australia continue to innovate, with Qantas launching its ultra-long-haul flights and Virgin Australia focusing on customer experience and expansion, rebounding as a strong competitor making solid profits it's never seen before, and is starting to look into potential future opportunities in the long-haul market as it steps into a closer partnership with the strong Qatar Airways. What makes Australia's aviation market unique is its resilience and adaptability. From the turbulent collapses of airlines like Ansett and Tiger Air to the ongoing evolution of the Qantas and Virgin Australia duopoly, every challenge brings new lessons and opportunities for growth. The skies over Australia are more than just a battleground for airlines. They're a lifeline for business, tourism, and regional development. Passengers will continue to benefit from the competitive spirit and innovation that define this industry. Whether it's through expanded routes, improved service, or more competitive pricing, the story of Australian aviation is one of constant reinvention, and it's far from over.